just how learning is not created equal. Meaning to say, like, when one student spends 10 hours on studying one thing, how much they internalize, how much they retain, or how much change is happening could be very, very drastically different than another student, based off prior knowledge, based off circumstances of the term, et cetera, et cetera. And I've been exercising this idea of using more visuals during these things. So I wanted to share a quick visual, and then I want to ask a question. But I definitely do want to respond to Catherine's question because I have a lot to say about what I learned from your class. Um, so here is a International Journal of STEM Education examining study habits in undergraduate STEM courses from a situated perspective. And one thing I wanted to highlight when I was going through this is this idea here. So a few researchers found that hours spent studying has declined from 24 hours a week in 1961 to 14 hours a week in 2003. And in 2009, the picture was bleaker, with over half of freshmen who took the Your First College Year survey and over half of the seniors who took the College Senior survey spending 10 hours or less per week on doing homework. And having been a tutor and mentor for over the last 6 years, working with hundreds of students, I would say the 10 hours is an overestimate on how much students really spend studying. Um, so when I come across information like this, I try to empathize with all parties involved. I try to empathize with the educators who are presenting information and really trying to accelerate this journey of learning for their students to not only get their credentials, but to be able to see these subject matters and disciplines in more robust ways and more meaningful ways. But when I see that, my understanding of learning now is there's only so much learning that can be done when you're in a lecture setting or when you're in class. And so much of that is self-study. But when the data supports that students are not engaging in self-study, I wanted to hear your thoughts, Cynthia, on what might be some, just maybe not even solutions, but what are your thoughts when you hear that students are studying less and less, and the data is there to support it?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. As you can probably tell by my white hair, this is not like something I've been doing only for a few years, right? I've been doing this for quite a long time. I've been at San Jose State over 30 years. And there used to be this sort of guideline that when I first began teaching at San Jose State, some of the professors said to me, you have to assign a certain amount of reading. Always assign more than you expect the students to read, because the guideline is most students read about 60% of what you assign, right? So 30 years ago, uh, this was actually the late 80s, right? Beginning of the 1990s. You could imagine that if you assigned 50 pages, they would read 60% of 50 pages, right? And so most students would begin and have some idea of how the reading began, and then maybe stop somewhere in the middle. What happens much more typically today is that if a student has an assigned reading and they read the first paragraph or two and they don't specifically get what's exactly going on yet, they just stop. They say, I didn't get that. And so it's really, the idea of reading for a class is much more challenging today, right? And so one of the things that we have in the lower division honors sequence, one of the things that one of my colleagues has begun to do is to create 5 to 7 minute videos telling about a reading, an important reading for that lower division honor sequence. Telling about it before the students tackle it, so that they have, it's like telling them the story of the reading before they do the reading, right? And some of the students, found that useful. Um, but it is that hope of making it safe or comfortable or like having learned one layer of whatever it is to understand a particular material, so that when they tackle the next layer, they already have their feet on some sort of solid ground, that they are to some extent or another familiar with what is going on. Sometimes we have tried saying a little bit about what the next reading will be in the current class, saying a little bit about what the next reading will be like, saying, okay, in the next reading, and then, next for the next class, you're going to be reading X, whatever X might be. So keep in mind when you're reading X that there are 3 things you're going to be looking for. And then whatever those 3 things might be, we hope that students, write those 3 things down, make sure that they're either on the PowerPoint or written on the board, so that they can keep those in mind when they begin to tackle that reading, right? So think about this before you start, and it's maybe not a little video, but it's, when we are in in-person classes or even with Zoom, you can say to someone, keep this in mind for what you're going to be doing next time, because it'll help you to sort of have something to watch for, or something to look for as you're going on. And sometimes those little things can make all the difference and keep a student reading. So for example, one of the very earliest readings in advanced honors was